Ladies, have you been led astray? Did you diddle where maybe you shouldn't have dabbled? Have you been unfaithful to your husband, wife, partner, main squeeze? Well, there's a judgment-free podcast just for you. Raw Truth, Stories of Female Infidelity, hosted by Rebecca Adams, tells the stories of these women from their perspective, anonymously and without judgment.
He got out of his car and tried to kiss me. I pulled back. I was still not wanting an affair. I was not sure what I wanted. Most likely, I just liked the way it felt to be wanted. This did not stop his calls. Several more weeks went by and we met up again, this time by the water. After walking and talking for an hour, I could not take the suspense anymore. I leaned in and kissed him. It was like fireworks.
If you need to come clean, get it off your chest, confess your sins with no Hail Marys required, then Raw Truth, Stories of Female Infidelity is the podcast for you. And remember, it's completely anonymous and judgment-free.
Raw Truth, Stories of Female Infidelity is available wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe today.
Raw Truth podcasts may contain explicit, sensitive, and questionable content. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the individual podcaster and are not based on the advice of a licensed psychologist, therapist, or other medical professional. Listener discretion is strongly advised. What does the word ponder actually mean? According to one dictionary, it means to weigh in the mind, to think about and reflect on. On Let's Ponder with Rebecca Adams, we do just that. We discuss taboo and questionable subject matter. For example, size. Does it really matter? Or do you really want to know the number of partners your significant other has been with? Or what about stories of disastrous one-night stands? How about being in a sexless marriage? These and other topics are what we talk about on this podcast. Hello and welcome to Let's Ponder with Rebecca Adams. Hope everybody is doing well. Today I've got a story for you that I actually shared on last week's episode of Raw Truth, Stories of Female Infidelity. I feel as though this story is good for both podcasts. It is a taboo subject, and it also involves female infidelity. This is about a gentleman who wanted to share his story with me as the other man. He is the affair partner, and his girlfriend, or the woman he was dating, is married. And so he really wanted to get this story out. And absolutely, I welcomed it. I figured it's a great topic for Let's Ponder. But then I'm also sharing it, like I was saying, with the Raw Truth, Stories of Female Infidelity, just because it is female infidelity, and it's just a different vantage point of it, a different way somebody's looking at it. So if you are a listener of both podcasts, don't be disappointed. It will be playing, or streaming rather, 2 Sundays in a row. But you won't be disappointed for too long, because on April 3rd, our next episode is called My Wife Became a Cuck Queen with the One That Got Away. It's kind of an interesting story, interesting title, but that's what I like to do, try and keep it interesting on this podcast. So let's get started on today's story, My Affair with a Married Woman by Tony. My childhood was tough. I was raised in a family of 4 by a single mother in the third world country of Mexico. We migrated to the U.S. and grew up Americanized. My father had cheated on my mother many times, according to my mother, but I never witnessed it. I was too young to know. I was never the popular kid. I was always picked on because of my short height, always picked last for games, etc., and never really fit in with anyone, being shy and timid. I was not sexually active until I was about 17 years old and had my first sexual experience with my girlfriend, who at the time was 2 years younger than I was. I always dreamt one day I would be rich and important. I am not married or have a partner per se, but I did meet an awesome girl through social media. I belong to a popular local bike club, and a lot of people know me. We met through social media, and we started chatting at the beginning of 2022. Honestly, I didn't look forward to anything but just having a good time. She wanted to experience riding a motorcycle, and I invited her to one of my weekly Friday night rides. She accepted, and we met at a local restaurant bar to have a drink and chat before going to the clubhouse. She did state that she had a spouse, but that they were on bad terms and about to break things up. She had told me that they had agreed to an open relationship where each one could go out and have fun without questions asked, even if it meant going out with the opposite sex. Our initial affair lasted from July until the end of October of 2022. I would say I never was interested in married women at all, but she made it feel so normal from our conversations and how it was no big deal to go out with her. We had almost nothing in common, but our sexual desire was on point. We felt such an intimate connection through intimacy that made us return for more, and a one-night stand was no longer an option for us. She made me feel great. From the first night we met, we had a very awesome connection. I could tell she was very attracted to me and made me feel very good about myself. We danced. We made jokes as if we knew each other for years and had a very good first time out. I believe she mentioned to her husband that she would be out with some girlfriends. This is what she told me. She had already planned to stay the night with me and had made her husband aware that she would return in the morning so she wouldn't be caught driving drunk. I knew where she lived and worked, since often she had me drive her to and from work or home when possible. However, I never stepped into her home, nor would I unless she was definitely single. I think that was my limit. There was never any signs in the early stages of the affair that her husband was suspicious. She would often see me without problems and would stay overnight at my place. We'd hang out often, and it seemed as though she wasn't married. As I mentioned, we started chatting in the early part of 2022, began the affair in July, and it ended in October when she was caught. She always told me he never checked her cell phone and that all the evidence was there. It became obvious when her husband started noticing her spending too much time on her cell phone and away from home on frequent night outs with her girls. But that was just an excuse for her to get out of the house and spend time with me. She told me she fell asleep and he checked her phone and found everything, but she wasn't sure exactly how much he knew. She only knew he had found out about the affair and became very, very angry. She disabled her social media and sent me an apology through text for ending it in such a cold way, but that she would be in touch as soon as she could. I was never confronted by her husband, as he didn't know where I lived or worked or anything about my personal life. The only thing that concerned me is when she told me she needed to block me from all of her social media and messaging apps because she cared for my safety. Thinking back about when she got caught, I think I got a little too attached, and I did feel very much alone and disappointed, frustrated, and a bunch of other negative emotions because I felt I loved her. No one I personally know is aware of the affair. I only told a couple of random people who I knew online, but never met them in person and didn't live in my city or state. Why did I continue this affair with her? I guess I just wanted a little bit of adventure. I never thought or imagined this would endure as it has, and always have that thought in my mind that at any moment, any day, this could completely come to a halt or end without explanations or goodbyes. As of the date of this story, it has only been about 3 weeks since the discovery. She came back to me about a week and a half later after the discovery. She and I agreed to continue seeing each other, but much less frequently. I don't feel bad, honestly, since I don't know him, and I just ignore the issue because I have a very busy lifestyle and only see her once a week or so. I often wondered why she kept the affair ongoing if she loved him and would not leave him, but I could never find out why. I wasn't expecting her to leave him, but in my innermost self, I wanted to believe she would. But then reality hit me and I thought, this is crazy. This isn't me. I don't want to break up a family. I could deal with being a third party and have our limits, but ending a marriage and being the replacement, I don't think so. I'll stick with the adventure and enjoy loving this woman. If I'd have known I'd become attached, I would have just ended everything the first night and left it at the one-night stand, and nothing more. I have come to find some new feelings after all of this. She has started to talk about her husband more to the point. I feel bad for the guy because he doesn't deserve a cheating wife, and I just try to ignore it altogether. My advice to the listeners: do not get involved with a married woman unless you know that you'll always be the backup option for when she feels alone and in need of affection and intimacy that she cannot obtain with her husband. Be prepared for the emotional roller coaster. Question for the listeners: if you were in a similar situation, how did you end it? So at this point, the story initially ended, but then he came back with more information. Hi, I do wish to emphasize that I hope people don't judge me or other men in this similar experience based on what I have shared, being the third party in a marriage. However, I would like to share the following. I enjoy this woman's company, and she made me feel wanted, loved, desired, and it had been quite some time since I had felt this way. I am 40 and she is 27, so the age gap isn't too much in my opinion. I have been single for 5 years now, and my last serious relationship was almost 10 years ago. It ended due to infidelity on her part, and I was at the time the husband being cheated on. I'd like to say that we may all be different and have different morals and values, but setting aside our differences and loving someone isn't that bad. The best you can do is to love the person back regardless of who they are or what they are and what they mean to someone. I don't know if I'm explaining myself well, but it did hurt me when the affair ended upon his discovery through her cell phone. I did feel her absence, and I missed her. I knew I couldn't do anything because that would only make things worse for both, and I knew she would not leave him for me. I wouldn't feel right if she did. She's an amazing woman, and her way of showing me that she cared and loved me was amazing and unlike anyone before her. I knew that things would end eventually, and it did at the end of October, but I didn't expect it to be so soon. Yes, the affair ended, but it has restarted on different terms. I do enjoy her company, and I do love this woman. She's a person, a human being with a desire to be loved, and maybe she just wants to enjoy it without being judged and having a good time while she can. I do too. So he ended that part of the story there, but once again, he came back with a final addition to his story. Hi, it's me again. So here's the final part of my affair with a married woman. It is most definitely the end of it, considering we are both now no longer in contact with each other, and it will remain that way because after what happened, I must accept it. I knew this day would come. I just didn't know how we'd end up, but here it is. So this affair should have ended back in the beginning of November. However, we continued to talk and see each other. But it was different now because she had scheduling conflicts due to the fact that she had been caught cheating by her spouse when she was asleep. He checked her phone and decided to look into conversations. I'm guessing he started to notice her a little differently. Well, the affair should have been over, but we stayed in touch through a text app, letting each other know about our day and how we missed each other, and how we just needed to be a little more careful, and that she couldn't stay at my place anymore. The few times we saw each other after the initial discovery were only a set few hours, and then she had to go home before a certain time to avoid further suspicion from her husband. Anyway, I had it in the back of my mind that this day would come. Thankfully for us, we were able to have at least one last experience with each other, and even though the sex wasn't as frequent anymore due to her time constraints, we managed to assist a Daddy Yankee concert here where we live and had a great time. This night was a night to remember because her husband picked her up at the local mall. He literally parked behind me, and she told me he knew nothing of me except that I was a coworker dropping her off. I was nervous when she told me he would be the one to pick her up at the rendezvous point of the mall. I was under the impression she had left her car parked there, as it was usually the case when we saw each other. Anyway, she got out of my car. We obviously didn't kiss goodbye since my car was parked in front of her husband's, and I sped away as soon as she shut the passenger door. I didn't want her husband to see me, so I took a different route home so he couldn't catch up and see who she was with. At last, about 2 weeks later, and a few other meetups in between, she suddenly stopped texting me. I was more than okay with this considering the situation, and I thought the affair was drying up at this point, so I understood. I kept going about my life dating other girls in the meantime since this affair wasn't going anywhere but south. I decided to text her a final message stating to her that it was perhaps best to leave things be, and that we had a lot of fun and we needed to move on. I already felt it was over due to the affair discovery and how our plans just didn't come through as they used to. I didn't hear from her for the entire day, and I became a bit worried. Maybe she was upset with me, or she agreed and didn't want to admit it. That night, I finally received a response, and it was very unexpected. She was caught again, and this was the reason for her absence. This time, though, she stated it was over and we could no longer be in any contact, and how I should be careful and take care of myself. This sounded almost like a threat because she confirmed that her husband was very angry about it. I decided not to respond further. She blocked me from the text app and deleted me off of social media as well. And this is how the affair ended. Cold, sudden, and now we are complete strangers. Life is funny sometimes. It was fun, and we had our moments. I do miss her a lot, but there is nothing else I can do except move on, and I hope she does too. This life was not for us, but it did allow me to discover things about myself I will never forget. I don't regret a single moment. I knew she wasn't mine, and she could never be mine. All things come to an end, and this is how our thing came to its end. She was a wonderful woman to be with, and if I was ever to come across her again in a different life, you bet I'll take my chances again. She was simply amazing. And that is his story about his affair with a married woman. Has this happened to you? I know he had asked the question about if it happened to you, how did it end? So on that note, if you have something similar that you would like to share, please let me know. You know, everything is pretty much an open topic within reason for this podcast with the Let's Ponder. And taboo subjects, situations like this, you know, there's going to be things that come up that we don't get, or this person doesn't understand because they don't have that mindset. And the one thing, and I don't judge, but the one thing that I would love to find out more about and understand is that he admitted he was cheated on by his first or his long-term relationship, but then he got involved with a married woman, and he admitted what he did was not right. I don't know, maybe he felt since he was on the other end of the coin, it didn't hurt him. And I think that happens a lot in affairs where and I talk about, the women dating the single men, and we've had episodes on Let's Ponder when it was just regular Let's Ponder. And it was about why single men will seek out married women on purpose. So if you haven't had a chance to listen to that one, scroll back quite a ways. I think it was a couple years ago. But it was interesting what people's reasons and excuses are for dating married women. So anyway, thank you so much for being here. If you have any suggestions for Let's Ponder with Rebecca Adams, always feel free to email me. I think at the beginning of this episode, I said the next podcast would be April 3rd. I was wrong. Sorry, April 2nd. They release on Sundays. I just had it typed in wrong on my schedule. And if you haven't yet, be sure to check out my other podcast, Raw Truth Stories of Female Infidelity. Thanks again for being here. You have been listening to Raw Truth Stories of Female Infidelity. Your support of Raw Truth podcasts is truly appreciated. When you visit the website rawtruthstoriesofFemaleInfidelity.com, you will find the story guides to help form your story, where you can subscribe to Patreon for exclusive episodes, and to vote for the podcast to be in the Hot 50 Countdown for Podcast Magazine. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to my other podcast, Let's Ponder with Rebecca Adams, where taboo topics are discussed. To submit your female infidelity story, share feedback, or have general questions about the show, please email rebecca.rawtruth@gmail.com.